Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jirko Imare, coming to you from Melbourne, Australia. I had a conversation with Mabior a few weeks back about national conversations and what he's doing. At a personal level, I admired what he was doing, and I wanted to know more at a personal level, which I learned from him. And based on that knowledge that I've learned from him and the predicament we are in as a South Sudanese community, wherever we are, whether in Australia, in South Sudan, in Egypt, in our diaspora community, I felt that it would be of a greater interest to the younger South Sudanese to listen to what you're direct, so that we know from him what national conversation is, what are its immediate aim, how did it come to existence, and what message of hope can national conversation say to the young people? Because at a personal level, I believe that where we are at the moment is a lack of a grand narrative. So we have no narrative that give our people hope. And I think at that particular time when I was talking about lack of narrative to give our people hope, I saw in 2 words, in 3 words or 4, Mabior said, seed, not bullet. And looking at what is affecting our people in South Sudan at the moment, there's a lot of, the next enemy is the hunger. And people who are angry who have nothing to eat can never think rationally. So in the context of that, I reached out to Mabior and I said, I am not yet a member of National Conversation, but I admire the message. But I wanted this message to be sent to the wider people. And we know from you, how is this thing a new revolution, which I see is a revolution in fact. So at my little time I spent in Australia, I have traveled to the countryside. And I've seen all the major cities are being supplied food, everything from farmers. So at that particular time when I was doing that kind of tour, I saw what Mabior is doing to be making a lot of sense. I think we need to know from you whether you mean what you are saying with the people that are in it with you, or is it just something that is a Facebook bite that will not last longer? So without much ado, guys, I just want to tell you that I've known Mabior for a long time. His cousin Mabior Deng is my good friend. So, and we were together in Ethiopia during the peace talk with Mabior. So on political ground and political understandings, and we know each other better. But I wanted that message to come out to the public. And this is how it will go. Mabior will have about 20 to 25 minutes to make his introduction of what national conversation is. We all want to learn what national conversation is. And then I will have an interactive 10 to 15 minutes with them. And from there, we'll go back to look at the comment or question people might have asked. Mabior, without much ado, please welcome.
Thank you, Jirko, for that introduction. I think I can start by quoting the revolutionary Frantz Fanon, who once said that every generation has a mission, and they must discover this mission and then fulfill it or betray it. You know, so this is what we are doing. This is how I can introduce the National Conversation South Sudan. It was some young people, South Sudanese, who sat down and analyzed our situation, and as young people, what is our mission, and we feel like we have discovered our mission, and it is now the time for us to either fulfill it or betray that mission. We know about the liberation that brought us, the liberation struggle which brought us independence of our fathers. They sat down and they discovered their mission as a generation, and we can say that they have fulfilled their mission and they have brought us the independence of South Sudan. So what next? We might ask ourselves, what next? Because life does not finish like a storybook where you say once upon a time, da 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 da, yada yada yada, and then they lived happily ever after and the story is over. Life goes on. So the National Conversation South Sudan, in brief, just not to take 20 minutes, I can give a whole history, which I will take time to. But in short, I can say that this is the National Conversation South Sudan. We look at it as the mission of this generation. So yeah, that's the brief. That's in brief, in a short introduction. That's what I can say about National Conversation. It's the continuation of the struggle. of our fathers and our forefathers in this generation.
You made a quick summary, but what is the National Conversation doing at the moment? What are the steps that you guys are doing to realize this mission? And what is the mission? It's itself practicality. What do you guys do?
Yeah. So we started, like, to go back into the I'll go into the history. The National Conversation started in the liberated areas of South Sudan. It was not called the National Conversation at the time. It was called REMNA, the Revolutionary Movement for New Africa. So as university students in 1997, I was attending USIU with many other colleagues, people like Comrade Africano Mande was with us, and he was part of this. He was there at the inception of this idea. So when we were at the university, many of the university students, Pan-Africanists, I met a lot of Pan-Africanist university students, and we used to have a lot of interaction. And so in being the son of late John Garang, they looked at me as somebody who could introduce them to somebody who they looked up to as a hero. And so they pressured me until I set up a meeting, and we went and met late John Garang as a group of Pan-Africanist students. And Comrade Africano Mande was part of this group, and we gave him a document. We gave him a document. We gave him a long document to read, which was our idea about what do we want to do as young people, young Pan-Africanist leaders. And at the time, the SPLM-SPLA had captured the imagination of African people all over the Pan-African world. And so we had ideas as young people of what to do. And so we gave him this document, and it was about a 20-page document and about our ideas. So when we gave him this document, he stayed with this document for about 1 year until we thought that he had forgotten about us and he was ignoring us. So then he then corrected the document and surprised us one day and called us in. And he had condensed the document to about 4 to 5 pages. This document, we look at it as a mission that the late John Garang gave us. Had he not passed away tragically the way he did, we might have been able to implement it in a bigger way. But he taught us that you have to always go with the situation you're in. So we have been trying to implement this document. The first time he gave us a mission, and we went to the liberated territories of New Sudan. He gave us 2 pickups. Some youth in the liberated areas will remember this, because we went from Kaya all the way to Anzara, introducing our missions to the youth. And at this time, we were introduced to the New Sudan, NESIA, the New Sudan
Youth Association.
Yeah, it was
NESIA, New Sudan Youth Association.
Yeah, it was led by, I'm trying to remember, Comrade Bramatali was the first
chairman.
Bramatali one, yes. And so he hosted us in Yei, and what is now today New Tokyo Hotel was supposed to be the headquarters in Yei for our organization. But because of the society and how the society is, the university, and you have to go to school, you have to get married. Like, there are certain expectations that people have on you. And as young people, we wanted to be in the revolution. But because of pressure of parents and the society, we were always forced to go back to school. So at this time, I went to the United States. And when I went to the United States, a great expansion of my consciousness in terms of Black consciousness occurred. And we've always been with this mission. The people who founded this, who are the founders of this idea, have always gone to different areas and continued the mission. So when we went to the United States and we were able to read more books about Black history and be able to come to know ourselves as, like, resolve our identity crisis within ourselves, we came to know many names for Africa, like Ethiopia, like was once a name for Africa. Sudan itself was once a name for Africa, and many others like Al-Kebulan. was once a name for the continent. So we chose this name Al-Kebulan so that we can raise the consciousness of our people in terms of getting us to understand that we come from an older history than just colonialism and slavery. But when the late Dr. John died and we returned to bury him, we came and we continued with the idea. The idea now became Al-Kebulan. Our current CEO, who is Comrade Denga Yok, is based in Juba. Our office is in Juba. So Comrade Denga Yok and myself and some other Pan-Africanist youth, Comrade Jeffrey Kamanda, we started an organization called Al-Kebulan. And Al-Kebulan was an organization which was consisting of three entities, which was Al-Kebulan Investment and Promotion, which was supposed to raise money for the organization, and Al-Kebulan Think Tank, which was supposed to be the brains that was going to develop the project, and Al-Kebulan Renaissance Trust, which was going to be the community development non-profit organization, which was going to conduct the project. So we did some projects in Central Equatoria, in Yei River, in Morobo, and in Terkeka. Like we had a few projects, but because of our low financial capacity, the projects were not able to pick up the way they should. The state in which the country was in, partly euphoria and partly mourning the death of John Garang. So like things were different. The environment was different, and people were on different missions. So the projects were not well received by the elites, and in the countryside the capacity was low. So over time we decided to merge the three entities into a new name society, because the new society had a lot of projects and a lot of members until the time when the war broke out in 2013, and we then decided we had to make a decision, because in a time of civil war, it is difficult to have civil society, because the very term civil society has the word civil in it, which means peace. And so we had to make a decision. What will we do in this kind of situation that our country has gone into? So many people now know this part of our history. Our members of the new society became associated with the SPLM, SPLA-IO. And this happened because in 2013, I think it's important for our people to understand that the SPLM, SPLA-IO was founded in April 2014. And the peace talks in Addis Ababa began in January of 2014. So from January to April, there was nothing called SPLM-IO. You know, there was peace talks in Addis Ababa. So those of us who had been pushed out for various reasons had been pushed out of Juba, and we were outside the system, found ourselves in different groups. The SPLM was split in two, and the people of South Sudan were split in two behind the different factions of the SPLM. And as you know, you were in the peace talks as well, and this is where I got to know you better. And you were on the side of the government, but with the opposition as well, you know, coming through the SPLM. So it was pretty much a dispute of the SPLM, which was our party of liberation. So we ended up becoming part of the camp, which became known as SPLM, SPLA-IO. And we endorsed this decision in April 2014. And as members of the new society, we knew ourselves to be part of a coalition of South Sudanese organizations, political and non-political. Because when the war broke out and people became IO, it was like an umbrella of SPLM, other political parties, civil society groups, religious groups, business people who were looking for peace in Addis Ababa. But over time, the forum became dominated by SPLM politicians, and the agenda became more political, and it became more of a regime change agenda. And the reform agenda slowly went to the back burner, and we suffered this in silence within the SPLM-IO. We continue to negotiate for peace and try to create the necessary conditions for peace to return to our country. But unfortunately, the peace was not being negotiated in good faith by certain politicians who maybe their end game was political jobs. So eventually, as the peace process dragged on, and the SPLM-SPLA-IO ended up collapsing with the Kitwang Declaration. But before that, we had made a decision as members of the new society to leave the IO, because the IO was no longer, in our opinion, doing the work of reforms that we had joined the SPLM-IO to do. So we exited, and in our exit, the idea now became the National Conversation. We decided to register as National Conversation because of just the philosophical idea that if we are going to have a new society that is going to be the result, it must come about from a national conversation. And this is an idea which is inspired by the SPLM, or should I say the SPLA, SPLM, which is the concept of the National Constitutional Convention, which when those of Bashir came to power in 1989, it was weeks away, where the Kokadam Declaration had said that there was going to be a national constitutional conference because the Sudanese people had not sat down to define the Sudan and the Sudanese people, and the nationality question had not been answered, and all these things. Older people will be able to understand what I'm talking about. So we wanted to bring these ideas into the new realities that we are living today. And this is the concept of the national conversation. We are now independent. We are not associated with any political group. We went to Addis Ababa to look for peace. When that group became more of a political party, we decided to disassociate ourselves from them. Since there is a peace, some semblance of a peace process going on in Juba, we don't want to jeopardize that peace process, but we feel like we can participate in other ways, like as a civil society group, and not as a political party. Because if we wanted to challenge the SPLM-IO politically, we could have formed a political party. But in our analysis, as young South Sudanese people, we don't feel that the proliferation of political parties will add any value to the socio-economic development of our people. Because our people are very tribalized at the moment because of the negative experiences of colonization and the slave trade, it has left our people in a very dehumanizing tribal hatred, state. So we don't want to divide our people more. So we feel like focusing on socioeconomic development and growth will have more value for our people. So this is what the national conversation is about. And so we are now on the ground. We are now on the ground in South Sudan. We recently, like I think everybody is aware, I went with a team of the moderators of the National Conversation South Sudan. I took the opportunity when President Salva Kiir sent for me. I decided to take the opportunity and go and hear what my uncle has to say. Since we are guided by our shared cultural values as South Sudanese. So when he called me, I decided to go and at least hear what he had to say, and I also used it as an opportunity to take some of the moderators of the National Conversation South Sudan and explain to him what we are about. And this resulted in a good handshake with the president and the National Conversation having an opportunity to be able to take our projects to South Sudan. And so we are now in South Sudan on the ground with our CEO. We have a deputy CEO. Our secretary is there. We have staff. Our office is there in opposite the Parliament House in what was formerly the John Garang International School, which is now the John Garang Center. And our office is there. Anybody can go. We have our website, www.ncsouthsudan.com. People can get more information there. We are on social media as well, on Facebook, National Conversation, on Twitter, handle at NC South Sudan. We are also on Instagram on the same handle. So we are all over the social media, and I think we have some projects that we are targeting now, because in Africa, food security is a problem, and in South Sudan this is even more of a problem. There's a lot of post-harvest loss in Africa. It goes up to like close to 40%. In South Sudan, it's even higher. Like we could even say 80 to 90% of food is lost post-harvest. So we have some ideas that we want to introduce to the youth. One of our biggest projects is the Youth Agricultural Farm. We are in the process now of registering the Youth Agricultural Farm. It's going to be a non-profit business where we are going to partially own this company with the farmers associations and union. We call it the South Sudan Association of Farmers, and they are going to be an entity, an umbrella of young South Sudanese farming associations and unions under one umbrella. We'll sign an MOU with the National Conversation South Sudan, and we will launch the project of the Youth Agricultural Farm as a non-profit business owned by the youth of South Sudan. And we have several projects, several products, which we have planned. One of them we have already launched, and people have witnessed in South Sudan. It was on SSBC. We came with drying of vegetables. So preservation of vegetables by drying and making into powder. And then there are some others which I don't want to mention prematurely at the moment, but we are working with the youth to do value addition, branding and packaging. And through our company, the Youth Agricultural Farm, we will distribute all over South Sudan. We will try and use our contacts with our people in government to see how we can get tax exemptions for products produced in South Sudan, and see how we can be a catalyst to the socio-economic development of our people. So we will focus on building the capacity of already existing women and youth groups in South Sudan. And so I think that there's also the other projects apart from agriculture, which is a think tank. We want to introduce a think tank. The other day we sent out a message to young legal scholars of South Sudan who might be interested in joining us. And this is not limited to legal scholars or even scholars who are certified by academic institutions. We want South Sudanese thinkers so that we can form a think tank where we can develop some ideas. Like, for example, we like to blame our leaders all the time, but all of us are leaders and all of us are responsible as citizens for the development of our country. The National Conversation South Sudan wants to form a think tank so that we can begin to propose certain bills, because a lot of times people want to say, you should not be involved in politics and scare our people away from politics. But it is the right of every citizen to engage in the politics of their country. But because of the legacy of colonialism and the slave trade, as Junubin, we were not allowed to be in politics. So this has remained in the national psyche of our people. And we need to demystify politics. And every citizen has a right to propose a bill for us to become a law in our parliament. So we want to begin to, like, for example, like one example is the issue of the dispute between the sedentary people and the cattle keepers in Equatoria. I believe this problem is a problem of lack of laws and legislation, because people who are for regime change and have regime change agenda can end up inciting our people against their own government, or should I say the executive, not knowing that the government is consisting of the legislative and the judiciary as well. And some of the work is of the legislature. And if we had some laws, for example, which can govern cattle keeping and can govern the sedentary communities, then this will lessen the dispute and everybody will be able to know their roles and responsibilities. There should be corridors for cattle keepers. They should, and we sit down, the sedentary people and the cattle keepers sit down and see how we are going to live together. This is the real politics. But politics has been understood as lobbying, political godfathers who clash amongst themselves, and then they get the cake, and then they divide the cake. But the National Conversation South Sudan wants to bring a new approach to politics. It is called macro politics. But what our Junubi know is micro politics, which is about stabbing each other in the back, and the dirty politics, what is known as dirty politics. So the diaspora has an important role to play here, because that is the other project of the National Conversation South Sudan. In our website, we have a donate page. As we are a registered legal entity in South Sudan, we have a bank account with Equity Bank. We have an Mgurush number in South Sudan as well. And through our website, people can donate through PayPal using their credit card or debit card. And so we have moderators in diaspora. You, Comrade Jerkwe, are one of our people in diaspora who has been instrumental also, and I think you will be even more instrumental in the future. But we want to launch a fundraising initiative, because this is being done by the moderators of the National Conversation. We are the primary funders of this idea. And it's difficult sometimes, because we also have to take care of our families, and so it's not easy. Also, we've not reached out before to diaspora because we did not have a very good system of accounting for the money if it was to come in. So it was easier for us to use our own resources, and in our policies as National Conversation, it is our initial strategy to use our own internal resources before we go out. The diaspora still, we consider you we still consider you internal resources, but we need to move from our own selves first. Once the diaspora comes in and the moderators in diaspora, Comrade Gio Kwaldenga Abot is there. Even Kijana Ali is one of our volunteers in the diaspora. Mary Nibol Maker is there also. There are the Forgotten Stone is in the Netherlands. We have people all over from Australia, the European Union, and North America. And so we are hopeful that we will be able to raise funds. And like I said, diaspora are internal resources as well, because now when we get to external resources, it will be development partners. But we do not want to lead with development partners going to ask for money, because there are many briefcase NGOs who are already doing that, and there's already a lot of mistrust in the donor community when you come in and with your sob story. So if we organize ourselves as people of South Sudan, and this is one of the things that we are doing with the farmers' unions and associations, because many donors don't give money to our people because we are not organized. There's a lot of finances available from donors, development partners, UN, etc. But we can't access these finances because we don't have the organizational skills to account for the money sometimes. And what ends up happening is some of our more unscrupulous brothers and sisters end up creating some briefcase NGOs, and they write fake projects, and because they know the skills, they can write a great justification, which is fake. And a little bit of the money will end up with them, and they will rent their apartments in Addis Ababa, in Westlands, in Nairobi, and they will survive with their families, and our people will end up with nothing, and the money goes back to the donors. So we want to change this reality by building the country of our already existing cooperative societies, You know, and so these are some of, I think this is I think I hope you're more satisfied with that explanation than the brief one I gave
Yeah,
to
no, it's
begin
good.
with.
Yeah.
But this is the national conversation. It is the continuation of the struggle of our people. The liberation of our people was not just the independence of South Sudan. The liberation of our people is the restoration of our greatness. It is the liberation of the individual. You know, because what did colonialism and what did slavery do to our people? You know, because you cannot. If we look at slavery, our people understand that one much better, but they don't understand what colonialism has done to our people. Because when we look at the slave trade, yeah, we look at it as the thing of the people in diaspora out there who were stripped of their identity and like. But if we look at the colonial system was an upgrade of the slavery system because the slavery system was so direct a system of oppression, of power on people that it immediately it gives people resistance, you know. So the colonial powers then decided to abandon the slavery system, economic system, and introduce the colonial system. So if the colonial system was an upgrade of the slavery system, it means that whatever the slavery system was doing, the colonial system does it better. And if the slavery system was stripping our black people of their identity, it means the colonial system was doing it even better in such a subtle way that you do not even realize. It's called social engineering in colonialism because as Dinkas, as Nuers, as Chuluks, as Anuak, as Acholi, as Zandes, our shared cultural values have been eroded by colonialism because we cannot be dominated by colonial powers and still maintain our identity of pre-colonial times, you know. And so a certain mental slavery and mental colonization has taken place on our people, you know. And so we need to fight this, and this is what is our mission in the national conversation: how to restore the humanity of our people, you know. And this is what the meaning of liberation is. Liberation is and independence are not the same thing, you know? So after we have gained our independence, the mission of liberating our people, it still remains, and a lot of times people understand the liberation movement as just the war part of it, but the war part of it was necessary because our oppressors did not want us to liberate ourselves. You understand? So when we talk about a struggle, you know, our fathers in the liberation before us taught us that the struggle is protracted. It is a protracted struggle. And so if it is a protracted struggle, it means it takes time, long time, you know. And so through time, the realities change. And so the realities that were confronted by the generation of youth before us was one where they had to pick up the gun, you know. But in the realities that we face as young people today, that is not the case. You know, we can confront this with a new approach, and this is what we mean by seed, not bullet. Diaspora communities, it is not a secret that a lot of the intercommunal violence that we suffer in our country is being financed by communities against communities. And so, yes, I said this, and it's a reality that we need to accept. And instead of bullets, why don't we send seeds and agricultural implements? Because, like Bob Marley said, a hungry man is an angry man. And so, if we feed our people, maybe, you know, we can be inspired, and we are inspired in the National Conversation South Sudan by the SPLA, SPLM slogan of peace through development and bringing towns to people. You know, so it's a continuation of the struggle.
Thank you very much.
Continua.
Yeah, thank you very much for that explanation. That's what we wanted, and that's what I wanted to people to hear. We extend the platform, but there are two things that I should have mentioned in the beginning before we started. One was we lost a very important person yesterday in Australia, Comrade Aguil.
Yeah.
I think most of you have seen it.
She's my auntie. She's
Yeah.
my auntie.
So she was
Rest
with us
in
in
peace,
Ethiopia. She was an activist when we were in peace talk in Ethiopia, and everybody knows what she's been doing. She's a proud, patriotic South Sudanese. So it's one of the things that we need to recognize, that our strong cadres are actually losing their life in the places that they should have not lost. Yeah, thank you.
Rest in peace.
Number two is that today marked 25 years since Operation Dengnial captured Rumbek. It was Operation Thunder Police from there, and it captured Rumbek on the 1st of May. And I think that was the first time your father came to Rumbek, I think on the 3rd of May. That was the day we had a landmine. The vehicle that I was traveling in ran on landmine.
Yeah.
So what I want to say is this: the generation that the young people of the 1983 or the 80s were given a grand narrative to leave all the comfort, leave everything important, and went and fought for their country. They are now grandfathers. Some of them are now grandfathers. Some of them are not even young anymore anyway. You cannot rely on them more. Some of them are dying through illnesses that should have been avoided. But my question is, the civil population, that was the bedrock of the SPLM, SPLA, was still actually carrying bigger load, supplying food, taking care of the children, giving birth to children, recruiting them into the military. Like people used to from the families. They were doing it from their heart because they knew there was a bigger mission they were fighting for. But from the 1st of May, don't let me go far, not even from the 1st of May, from the 30th of July, 2005, when John Garang died, a kid born on that particular day is about 17 years now. These 17 years are the ones that were fighting war at the time. And we seem like, if you look back, you look like the civil population, when we got the government, we got the money, we got everything we needed, are actually doing worse off than the civil population that was during the 90s and the 80s. So on that very note, and that's why I came back to the issue of the National Conversation. Seed, not bullet. Our young people now, not others, to be honest, we are not the young people. A kid born in 1997 on the 1st of May is 25 today. These are leader on themselves, and they actually has no meaning for their life. That's why I say, if National Conversation is actually trying to give these young people a chance to work together for a bigger enemy, which is now anger, then you got a better chance of you and your team working with you to take them away from Juba. Because the reason they line up behind ankles and these big politicians, because they had no hope. They had no any other purpose to fulfill their life. First of all, they're hungry, they have nothing to eat. Number two, they have no grand agenda that they will live their life. So National Conversation, to me, if it actually carried to its conclusion, is a window for the young people. So that by the time we are 78 years, we will be able to say, at least we rescue those young people that were needing somebody to rescue them. Now, that is your responsibility, and I know you know it better than me, what is happening in South Sudan. And if you guys could be able to practically go down to the states that are stable, like Lake State, for example, talk with the governor in. If Governor in can give you guys a youth camp, that can be another opportunity. So that we go there and sit in that youth camp all over the country, or at least 2 weeks, like Brock when your father came. So like new side. So you can have a youth camp where we go and discuss these agricultural issues. People come and meditate together, find out what is the next mission. You would have actually given a lot of young people a purpose to link together because they don't know themselves. Like you and me, most of them don't know themselves. And the first thing that you're going to start is bring them together, at least once a year or 2 a year. Now, on my side in diaspora need leadership more. Mabior, when I came into this country, it was I didn't plan to come here. I refused to come during the refugee years. I came through my partner, as you know, the entire story, you know it better. But after 2017, when I look at what is happening with the young African, some people say we are not the majority in prison, but most of our young people, almost every house has got a teenager arrested in jail.
I have a nephew.
Yeah.
my nephew. I have a nephew also. So just to add to your people, to the people you're mentioning. One of them is my nephew.
Yeah. So what I saw was, and this brought me a lot of enmity from most of our colleagues, who the narrative is white man is racist. They're focusing more on racism than focusing on what they need to do themselves to help their own community. Because South Sudanese, look, the schools that were open in the early 90s, there were no money. This was SPLA soldiers who came back to their villages and opened a school to educate us. We are a voluntary, we are a civil society community in nature. We don't believe in government. We believe in personal responsibility. And if you look at the alternative, activists, the community activists in the Western world, they are more interested in using race card, not discussing the real issues, apply for a government grant. And when the government grant is given to you and you use it, like you said before, with the example of the guys that you said, the briefcase organization, they become, that's enough. So they will have to maintain a narrative that will give them money. Our people at the grassroots, at the community level, there's nobody giving them meaningful purpose. And all young people getting fueled up into Black Lives Matter, racism, but they don't ask themselves, what do we need to do in this new country? Simple example, in the 90s, when 1991 happened in Bor, most people from Bor moved to Baragazal. Most of them came to my hometown, where we used to live. As a newcomer to some people's area, it is incumbent upon you to show a sign of coexistence. Because if you come as an invader, it's different. But if you are coming as somebody running away from your difference, it is you who have to prove to the host that you did not come with violence, you came in peace. And as a result of that, you'll be able to be given whatever you want, instead of blaming the host for whatever you came. So diaspora, to be honest, they need a message like the National Conversation. Because most of the young people, when they're arrested, they cannot travel outside the country. And Australia is an island. And when they get repeated crime, it affects their credit. They can never get a job. And if they want to sustain it, continue doing the crime. So on our side, I have tried to not rush into asking government money. I have an organization that I run. But my message was not, I said, no, I don't need government money now. I need government understanding of what needs to be addressed. Because when the government and the people understand what the problem is, they can give you the money can be used right. So at the moment, I get involved into political activism. I also met with the National Farmers Federation of Australia. And in my conversation with some of them, it was the fact that the farming environment in South Sudan is a bigger asset to the South Sudanese people. And if you can help us through the medium that I will tell you in the long run, with the technical know-how, even training, we can bring some people to be trained on some things. So I've tried to do groundwork on those of that. Our people here will be a disaster if they are not given a mission at home to attract them. And if you see, when we signed peace in 2005, and we went to Juba, all the educated young South Sudanese in diaspora, they all came to Juba. They opened saloons, they created their own businesses. It was 2013 that brought them up outside the country. So if we create that conducive environment, that will attract our young people, and which I believe the natural population, I on my side will be more than willing to help. And I will be coming as soon as the election finish. I'm very much involved in supporting some of these political leaders. And when the election finishes, I'll be coming to South Sudan, and I will meet with the National Conversation, so that when I come back, we should be in that. We in Australia should be able to invite a delegation of National Conversation, and
we're ready for that.
To some key organization, like technical polytechnic, where you train people how to be carpenters, you train people how to operate machinery. I was vocational skills. I was in politics in South Sudan, but when I came in here, I'm a laborer. I'm a construction worker. I learned more doing this job than I learned in the university. So national conversation will be needed to help our people. Actually, you don't need help from us. We need you to help us.
Yeah, we will help each other, because as I'm listening to your response and you talking, our Junubin in Australia and in diaspora are not separate from us. So if there are problems which are affecting us as people in South Sudan, then they are there with you also in Australia. They are there with you in diaspora. Because what I see, which is affecting us, is a lack of community. There's one of our teachers who teaches us about community. And there's a difference between a neighborhood and a community. Like just because you go and you sleep somewhere and all of you have your houses in the same place does not mean that you are a community.
Right.
There's more involved in and so this is what I was saying earlier, that colonialism and slavery has taken away from us is the sense of community. And you cannot come up as an individual if you don't have a community. And so we need to be able to like the National Conversation wants to open the platform to be able to have these conversations, because communities are diverse in themselves, not just having a diversity of different communities, but even within the community, we have diversity. And the isolated society from the slave trade days has created if you read Carl Jung, you read about how society, the relationship between society and the individual, and our societies have become very tyrannical in terms of oppression of the individual, and there's hardly any expression of the individual. And this is where the whole liberation concept comes in. And so we also have, like, this is why a lot of our children are in jail in diaspora, because of this lack of sense of community. And we need to have this. We need to have these conversations.
I just want to add something on that Carl Jung thing. Jung, in one of his books that is obvious, called Undiscovered Self, he said, when you have a lot of individuals that have not discovered themselves, they form a tyrannical community that you are referring to. But once we focus on the individual upbringing, so that we have people that understand the purpose for their life, and all together can form a meaningful community, because everyone understands
exactly.
So it is a liberation of the individual mind. Liberation of the individual mind to be comfortable with themselves and take personal responsibility. Because when they are personally responsible, they care about the environment, they care about the member of the community, and that's when it takes a village to raise a child. It doesn't take a tyrannical, but it takes a village that is responsible individual to raise a child.
Yeah. It's important to understand the history of the slave trade in our land, to understand what has happened to our communities, because we are people of the Nile. And if you know your history going back 500 years before Jesus, then you will know that we are the ones who gave civilization to the world. But today we are living in deplorable condition as people. And so what happened, to what happened to our people? Even more recently, during the slave trade of the Turkey, changes have happened in our community, where the state of our women today is so shameful, and we consider it as culture, but I don't see in pre-colonial times that our people used to marry children and be proud about, and the way that we treat our women today is very shameful, and it is not culture by any stretch of the imagination. And this is not how our people were before, because being people of the Nile, believe it or not, and many of our guys will not like this statement, but the Nile Valley was a matriarchy. People who have studied our ancient history know that the Nile Valley was a matriarchy. But we were invaded by Greeks, we were invaded by Romans, we were invaded by very aggressively misogynist and negative patriarchy, which was not like, because Africa also had its patriarchies, but it was not like the patriarchies of Greek and Rome. And so once we became Hellenized, today we are aggressively misogynistic, to the point that the fact that women were once ruling our society has gone out of the collective historical memory of our people, And so coming to national conversation and socioeconomic development, if we continue to keep our women in the condition that they are in, our country will not develop. If you go to East Africa and you go to other African countries, women's liberation still has a long way to go, but it's not like South Sudan. If you come to Kenya, from the markets to the corporate world, into the everywhere in the economy, you find women more than you find men in the places that matter, that are the backbone of the economy. But in South Sudan, we say that we want to put our women under our foot. How are we going to have an economy like this? It's going to be impossible. So there's a lot of things that, when we talk about change, we're not talking about political change per se. We are talking about the change of the society, because for those who are students of economics, they know that an economic system is upheld by a social system. You have to create the social attitudes to consume the things you produce. So the kind of economy determines the kind of society you have. They are inextricably linked.
No,
so when we had colonialism is an economic system with trading companies. So the trading companies of colonialism had their partners. So we have the slave trading companies as well. So like that system of economics is upheld by a certain social system. So when the slave trade was abolished in our land, we did not have a rehabilitation of our pre-colonial values and culture. Was not re-established, was not restored. The slave trade economy was abolished, but the economic, the social system which upheld the slave trading economy was not abolished together with the slave trade economy in 1930. In 1930, the slave trade officially ended, but by 1956, when the Sudan got independent, our northern brothers reintroduced the slave trade. Some of our South Sudanese who were junior partners in the slave trading companies, it was in their interest for slavery to continue, so it continued. And so this system that you mentioned earlier, where the people like the chiefs would collect the children to be, and the liberationist struggle used this system. That's the same system, of the slave trade, and it continues today. Even though the economic system was abolished, the social system continues. And the only way you can escape this system is through education. If you go to school, maybe if those of our citizens who live in the Boma are still at the mercy of chiefs who do not follow the constitution and violate the rights of our citizens, because these are social systems which are outdated and are still connected to the Turkey, and which was called the Nizam al-Jadid in the Sudanese curriculum. So the national conversation wants to have these conversations because we need social change, not political change, not power struggle, between elders. When we talk about change, and when we are talking about changing our society, to become free societies of liberated individuals, because the strength of a community will be determined by the strength of its individual members, and so if we have strong individuals, just one or two in a community, and then we are the people, we are the people of so and so, then that is not liberation. We want every citizen to be free and to have to be taught methods of wealth creation, so that we can be able to enter into the modern world. We went through several generations of isolation. Either you come from a community which was enslaved and was around the Zariba, or you are from a community that was hiding in the swamps or in the mountaintops or in the jungles of South Sudan. After our independence, now that we are emerging into how things have been done by the rest of the human family, we need to catch up with the world, with the modern world, not to fight for power in Juba. So after all these negative experiences over all these generations, at the eve of our independence, we cannot just wear these nice suits and pretend that we have been okay all along. We have a lot of mental health issues in the community, and a lot of the rate of suicide is something which is not talked about in our community, and like there's a lot of stress, and so we need to develop the human resource is the primary resource which must be developed by a country before we can go and so this like, for example, about the airstrips. I wrote an article yesterday about the airstrips.
I got it, yeah.
which were being posted. This is more than our people are struggling for now. Like who, like in the villages of South Sudan, can afford even to travel right now, you know? So we need to deal with the more immediate things that are concerning our people. If we build the human resource will build those airports. If they're, you know, but as for now, our people are still in the status quo, which was established during the slave trade and colonialism. It's still there, and we need to deal with this.
You said something before about economics. So I am an economist by profession at the University of Nairobi. And what you're talking about is that before a government decided to tax people, before any economy decided to tax people, they have to create what is called economic tax base. Do you have a working force that can produce something? When you create the environment for people to work, to produce, you cannot take them to maintain that environment. And that's what we are lacking. We ran all together. So it's a very good point, and I think you got it correct. And another thing that I wanted to say is that our women issue. We've got up to now, maybe I still believe in our Dinka culture. We are a matriarchy. We are not a patriarchal society where women played a bigger role.
The vestiges of the matriarchy can be found in our culture.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah,
very
if you dig in, you will discover them.
When this is where I get into a lot with most of these modern feminists, who without studying what is the role of a woman in a Dinka society, they are only jumping into mistreatment of women. And what is the comparison? What do they compare it with? They compare that mistreatment with the way women are treated in a white society. I have no problem them saying that women are being mistreated, but you will have to argue where to take them back. Take them back to your history. How women are treated in your history, not how they're treated in a European civilization.
Another thing to add to that, white women in Europe did not become free because of the goodness of the heart of white men. White women fought a struggle for their liberation, you know. So our women also have to, like, it is their duty to fight their struggle for their liberation as well. I don't have any problem with that, but we cannot think that white women in Europe just suddenly became free and like, they had their own struggle and
they fought their struggle in the context of their values. So I want our women to fight our struggle in the context of our values. Not in the context
I don't want to go there, like, you know.
That's all right. I get your point.
I don't want to provoke our women. I think our women are the ones who will define their own struggle. I don't want to define it for them.
Yeah, like for example, here I've been saying in this country where I am, in Australia, if there is anything important South Sudan are going to get out of this country, we'll get it through our women, because all the kids, they stay with their mothers. 99.9% of the role being played in the kids' life in this country where I am, in our South Sudan community, is run by mothers. So
the food preservation that we are doing in the youth agricultural farm in the National Conversation now, we learned it from our mothers. You know, it's only that our people have forgotten the indigenous knowledge systems. But all our communities used to do these things that we are reintroducing as National Conversation. We learned it from our mothers when they used to cut weka and basal, and you know, and like they used to cut the bami and make it into weka. They used to cut basal and say yahi baden basal bukun madum isuk. Then they dry the food. You know, it is something we learned from our mothers.
You know, during harvest time, but you can eat anywhere as you want. But as the dry season comes, they try to separate the good one, because seeds, and then when you look for tongue, then they say no, can actually eat it. So when they say actually eat it, so they've preserved.
Exactly.
They've preserved
it's a famous
so can actually it cannot be used anyhow. So there's a limit now which you can use them. So there's a very big story behind our women and the role they play. What Jordan Peterson said was that he said, I think he quoted one of the psychologists, and he said a society.
One of my inspirations.
Even me too. I met him one time here.
Mm.
So he said,
Okay.
yeah, and he's coming back in November. So he said,
Okay.
he said a society that act out the values can have a long history and can pass it on to the next generation than a society that only write down the values, they don't act them out. So our community, our mothers, what our mothers have been doing for centuries, repeatedly, being carried out repeatedly. It goes into the psyche. But now that we have stopped being acting out our values, and we act out other people's values.
Hellenized.
And we act out others' values, we will definitely lose them. And we are not we are not a literally society. So national conversation, if it come back, tell all the young people, let's go back to the villages, make our houses in the villages. We'll only come to the city if there's something the job you're doing within Juba. But there's no job in Juba. Your job is to stay in your farm or your village life. So that
we take the towns to people.
Yeah, people will see what you do. For example, during the 90s, when we were in the around Barpaka there, you will find Commander so-and-so his house is just next to a normal villager. Commander so-and-so his house is just next to normal village. They believe that they're eating the same food, they carry the same values, but when it comes to the authorities, they will know that now it's time for them to act. Okay? And that will be the people. So people see them and they carry out the same value. There's no distinction. Unlike in Juba, where a minister has got a house, and if you want to meet people, he's not inviting them to his house, to meet his families, meeting them in the hotel. So there's a disconnection between how we act our values out and how we're acting other values out. For example, look at cultural dance all over in diaspora. Can we not have one cultural city where we go every year?
Yeah.
A natural conversation can facilitate that. Where we go every year, traditional dance, we go and dance there. It's recorded and put in archive.
So they're called festivals.
Having our history.
They are called festivals. They're like when I was in diaspora, I used to attend the Caribbean festivals, and all the Caribbean cultures were featured in those Caribbean festivals.
Let's look. I don't know what anybody saw.
It's also a business. It's also a business opportunity. You know, those festivals.
Yeah, that's where you sell your cultures. You sell your food. You sell your dressing, and people can buy them. And that's what we need to be working on the natural conversation.
Yes, sir.
So what I want you to do, Mabior, as we come back to an end, I hope this is a good conversation, beginning of so many series to come. Because when we keep talking to people, that's when people must get down to people. We cannot stop. We may even be doing it weekly if we want it, or every fortnight. Because we'll have to be specific now, pick topic to talk about or programs that you guys are doing, and maybe invite other people to ask us questions. My Zoom account is about 100 people. So the next one, I will advertise it, put it online. If people wanted to join, I'll give them a link. They will have to come in, write the question down. Because we also want to hear from people, what do they want to ask questions for? What do they want to be answered?
We are ready. Yeah. We are ready for the conversation.
So that conversation will be done here. And if all of you are watching, just get in touch with the Natural Conversation if you are in Africa. If you are here, get in touch with me. My Zoom account is big, and we will choose the time now to have a Q&A. It will not be Mabior talking. We'll just be answering questions from people who wanted to ask us questions. For now, I don't think whether we'll be able to reach to the comment on Facebook, but we'll have to look at them, write them down, and you and me after this one, we'll have a chat after the recording finish. We'll have a chat about when should we have the next event. But for all those who came up here, I'll just give you a chance to make your final remark if need be, so that we close this today.
Thank you, Comrade Jurkwe. I don't have much final remarks except for directing our people to our different social media outlets. We are on the internet at www.ncsouthsudan.com. We are also on Twitter at Twitter handle NC South Sudan. The same the same handle for Instagram, NC South Sudan. We are on Facebook as well, and we call on people of South Sudan to converse. Our slogan in the youth agricultural farm is seed, not bullet. So we urge our people to join the conversation, and we will be here again And thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Mabior. It was a pleasure to have you, my brother. And I think we all captured exactly the burden we have as a generation. And we need to work together, look for people who can actually do better things than us. And as for now, you can find me on my Twitter account too. If you follow Mabior, you will find my Twitter account as Jerry Anyuan. And my Facebook is where the live stream is going on now. But please feel free to join the National Conversation online. I will try to spearhead this moderation so that we can hear from people. I would want many people as much to tell us what they think is the solution for our generation. Thank you very much, Mabior, and hold on there.